Welcome back to the Crochet Crowd as well as yarnspirations.com. I'm your host Mikey. Today is a quickie tip for Facebook, and we get a lot of questions on the same question all the time, and I've been guilty for this as well. When I started to crochet, I always ended up getting a triangle. We know what happens there. Either we are skipping the last stitch or we're adding on to the last stitch. So I'm going to teach you this today on how I visualize this. You may not like the way I'm about to teach it, but that's okay, because if you want technical terms, you're on the wrong page anyway. So so let's begin. So what I want you to do is that here is double crochet, and I'm teaching you the way that it would be if you were in a live workshop with me. So I'm not formal in a live workshop, everybody knows that. So what you're looking at here is double crochet, and each one of these stitches is like an apartment building. So when I go to look at this, I'm seeing apartment buildings, and what I want to do is that I want to dance on top of the apartment buildings from one to another. So what we have to pay attention to is that apartment buildings, if we were to put one on top of each other, they are like building blocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm about to start. So I'm going to chain 3, and usually in the rules of crochet, unless it tells you otherwise, the chaining 3 counts as a stitch. So this apartment building that you see right here, well, here is the apartment building that is going to go right directly on top of it. So I look at these as apartment buildings stacking on top of each other. So a lot of people, when they go to have their blankets grow too much, they put in an extra one down right on the bottom here. So this means that this apartment building would then have 2 apartment buildings, and let me just demonstrate that. So a lot of people, what they do is they put in an extra stitch right in the very beginning like this, and then all of a sudden when you come back to this is that you're going to start getting bigger and bigger because you're adding into the wrong spot. So if you can visualize each one of these stitches as an apartment building and you're stacking the apartment buildings up, it makes it a lot easier. So the very next stitch is right here. Okay, so that is the next apartment building, and I'm just going to double crochet myself across. So I'm just matching exactly what you see. So a lot of people, including myself, when in the learning stages, maybe a few years actually well into the learning stages, I was still messing up on where the end is. But what I did for myself is that I came up with this analogy of apartment buildings, and ever since then, I can make my own neighborhood with crochet, but also being able to understand my stitches too. So I look to see how the apartment buildings are stacking up on top of each other. How many stitches do I have left? If you said 3, the answer is correct, because the one that's the turning chain counts as one of them. Now usually what happens in the new crocheters is that this one over here, it looks like it's bunched together when they're so tight. So what they do is they end up stopping a row early, or a stitch early. Okay, so usually people think that this monstrosity here is one stitch, but in actual fact it's 2. So they stop right here, but in actual fact they still have 1 stitch to go, and it looks like it could be correct. Oh, sure it could be, but when you have a triangle afghan, you just tell everybody you meant to do it that way. So we want to make sure we get into the top of this turning chain. So we don't put it into this nasty one right here. We put it into the one right beside it. So it's the turning chain, it gets the final double crochet. So you see that the apartment buildings are still stacking on top of each other all the way up. So let me just pull it out like this. Okay, so when we go to turn our work, we just look at it the same way. So we want to put another row of apartment buildings. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, there's your apartment building. See, and it's stacking right up on top of the other ones, and the other one way down here, if that matters to you. So you know that the next apartment building is where you're going to start. So unless you intentionally really want to start growing out and adding extra stitches, then you always have to just do the same way. Now this is not always the same. This is only for double crochet. So this is not a rule across the board. Single crochet, we do go into the same stitch that we are in, but it's only the double crochet. And usually when people in the beginning stages are messing up on an afghan, they usually are doing the double crochet. So again, I'm coming into the very end. Okay, so what people do is they come into the end, and now I'm a loose crocheter, but don't tell anybody that, because I don't want any rumors spread around me. I don't want any rumors spread around me how loose I am. But in actual fact, this is where most people stop if they're screwing up. So they forget that turning chain also needs a double crochet. Now you're going to notice one thing, is that people say they have this god ugly hole. Let's talk about nasty holes. They have a god awful hole in the row below, and that does happen. And so you're going to notice this in the long term, that every other row will have just a hole that just looks a little bit bigger than the other holes. And that happens every other one. So the one that's going to look a little bit bigger in this row will be on this side. That's just natural. That's what we're talking about. So, so again, to start up is chaining 3. And we look for the apartment building. So here's the apartment building. So the next one is right there. See? Now, people have their own ways of remembering how to do things. This is mine. It's not very conventional. I don't want to bog new crocheters down in my workshops with technical language. They'll get it. Yeah. So, okay, so I'm just going to go right to the end. I like this color, isn't it? This is the Karen Simply Soft Brights color. Certainly, I need my sunglasses to have this stuff. Love it. This is what I did the hat in too. So again, right to the end. Okay, so you got 2 apartment buildings left, so you got 2 stitches. And remember the turning chain also right at the top of the turning chain. So never go into a gap, okay? To make sure you always go in, because if you go into a gap, look how nasty it'll look. Do you want nasty or do you want fabulous? See how you get that big gap in there? So don't go into a gap, go into the top of the turning chain. And you still get a gap space, but it won't be as bad. And that's my quick tips using apartment buildings for making sure that you can keep your neighborhood all in balance on one side and another. Till next time, that's my crazy analogy. Hope it works for you. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.